Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today. Exploring this thing called the eye of the needle. Sounds intense, right?
Definitely intriguing.
Yeah, it's this personal process. A guy named Christopher, he kind of came up with it. Imagine being totally frozen emotionally. That's where he often found himself. We've got a lot to unpack here. We've got Christopher's own words, some poetry about his experience, and even, get this, a funny kind of waking lucid version.
Wow, that's quite the range of perspectives. Should be interesting to see how they all connect.
Right. And it all comes back to like dealing with really tough emotions and limitations, especially when his wife, when she's venting emotionally. He even uses this phrase, eating emotions. What do you make of that?
Eating emotions, huh? Well, it sounds intense, but it also suggests, confronting those emotions head on, not shying away.
Yeah, totally. And to get how he gets there, we got to go back to what he calls his core wound. Imagine this, being a kid, getting diagnosed with a heart murmur, and then carrying this belief that your heart just can't take it into adulthood. That's Christopher's starting point.
Oof, yeah. I can see how that would shake someone's worldview. Makes you wonder how that played out in his daily life.
Well, think about it. If you're convinced your heart's fragile, right, you might, without even realizing it, dodge situations.
Makes sense. It's like that classic fight or flight response, but instead of fighting or fleeing, you freeze.
Exactly. And Christopher actually says he experienced that, this frozen feeling, not wanting to be touched, wanting to hide those feelings, like an internal battle.
Oh, I bet.
Wow, yeah, it's like a recipe for overload. So how does he break free? How does he get unstuck?
That's where this eye of the needle thing comes in. It's his way of like working through those emotional blocks so he can, handle more, experience more.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about this process.
Going inward, like really confronting those tough emotions. And remember that phrase, eating or digesting them.
Yeah, yeah, it's like instead of pushing those emotions away, he's facing them, processing them.
Right. So there are two main parts to how he does this. Soul kernel, that's one, and contouring. Think of soul kernel as his like anchor. He visualizes a six-pointed star, focuses on his pulse, and repeats a mantra. It helps him find a peaceful place inside.
That was very calming. And what about contouring?
He pictures shapes with his eyes closed and traces their edges. He actually got this from Tibetan practices.
So it's personal experience, Eastern stuff, and visualization, all mixed up. Very unique.
Totally. And then it gets even cooler. He combines them. Imagine that star from the meditation hooping around the edges of those shapes he's picturing. And he links it to indigenous cultures, the hoop and the tree idea.
I love that visual. So stillness from the inside and like feeling things in the body all at once. But how does this help him actually eat his emotions?
That's the thing. By doing this, he says he actually can face and digest those tough feelings. And the result? He feels energy released, a deeper human experience, and even, get this, more empathy for himself and his wife.
Wow. He's not just handling his emotions, he's turning them into something positive.
Exactly. And it's not just about feeling better, it's about being able to handle more emotionally.
So he's not running away from those situations anymore. He's present, connected, even when it's intense. That's growth.
Absolutely. It shows how powerful personal growth can be. We don't have to be stuck in our past or our limitations. We can change, grow.
Inspiring, for sure. And we haven't even touched on the poetry or the waking lucid version yet.
So much more to unpack, right?
Before we jump into those, what really stands out to you about Christopher's journey so far?
It's how he blends personal experience with things from different traditions. He created his own unique path. That's powerful.
Yeah, he's not just following someone else's rules. He found what works for him. We can all learn from that.
Definitely. It reminds us there's no one right way to grow. It's about finding what helps you connect with yourself and grow.
I love that. So with Christopher's story as our foundation, let's shift gears. Let's dive into the poetic side of this. Explore the symbolism, the metaphors. Ready to unravel some mysteries?
Absolutely. Let's see what new layers of meaning we can uncover.
All right, the poem starts with this question. My heart can't take it, but is it open? What do you think?
That's deep, right? It's that struggle we talked about earlier, wanting to connect, but being afraid of getting overwhelmed. Christopher's questioning how much his heart can handle, how much tenderness, how much intensity.
It really captures that internal battle. And it's not a simple answer. It's like an invitation to explore.
Right. And then it gets even more interesting. The poem talked about the eye of the needle as this two-way Jacob's ladder to the central sun. It's like cosmic, connecting our human experience to something bigger, higher.
I love that. It takes the eye of a needle from something personal to something universal.
Right. And there's this line, allow the elements to gather their magic. It's like saying, let go of control, trust the process. There's something bigger at work, even when things feel chaotic.
It's like surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And what's cool is this poem, it doesn't give us answers, really. It invites us to think, to find our own meaning in the symbols and metaphors.
That's what makes it so cool, right? It sparks the imagination.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that sometimes the most profound stuff, it's not spelled out, it's in the spaces between words, in symbols and imagery.
I couldn't agree more. This poetry adds a whole new dimension to Christopher's experience.
It really does. And it makes me even more curious about that last interpretation we have, the waking lucid version. Ready for a good laugh.
Oh, definitely. After all this emotional depth, I'm ready for something lighter. Bring on the interdimensional complaint department.
Haha. All right, let's see how this comedic take unfolds.
Okay, so picture this. The eye of the needle, but it's like a cosmic customer service center. And there's this overworked receptionist dealing with heart capacity cases all day long.
Sounds like a recipe for cosmic chaos. And of course, we have Christopher, front and center, feeling like his heart is full to the brim, right? Like, no more, please.
Exactly. And to make it even funnier, he's got his 4 friends with him. Each one represents a different part of his dilemma. Strength is a buff lion in a suit. Tolerance is a river, super chill, wearing therapist glasses.
Wait, a river with glasses? That's hilarious.
Right? And then there's fear, freaking out, of course. And love, who's all about, growing and connecting.
I love how these characters represent different parts of Christopher's inner world. It makes it so relatable.
Totally. And then we've got the central sun, all wise, acting as the customer service rep, trying to sort out this whole heart situation.
I can just imagine the central sun being all like, okay, let's see what we can do about this overflowing heart.
And then there's Jacob's ladder, struggling to connect different levels of awareness, getting all tangled up. It's a great metaphor for how messy personal growth can be.
So true. And the little details make it even funnier. Like the vending machine is out of enlightenment snacks, and they mention how the heart's last few expansions involve binge-watching TV.
Oh, I love those details. They make it so relatable. And speaking of relatable, let's get to the punchline of this interdimensional comedy. Christopher figures out that his heart feeling full isn't a bad thing. It's actually a sign he's about to get a supernatural storage upgrade.
That's brilliant. It flips the whole idea of feeling overwhelmed on its head. It's not bad. It's a sign of growth.
Like saying, hey, you might be stretched, but get ready. Your heart's leveling up.
Exactly. And it ties back to Christopher's whole journey, right? Our hearts are capable of so much more than we think.
This Waking Lucid version is genius.
Totally. It takes something that could be heavy and makes it fun and relatable.
It's a good reminder that even when we're doing deep personal work, there's room for humor.
Couldn't agree more.
So we've seen Christopher's journey through 3 totally different lenses. His story, the poetry, and this cosmic comedy. What a trip.
It really has been. Each lens gives us a different view, a different understanding of the eye of the needle.
And now I'm curious, what stands out to you the most from all these different takes? What's resonating with you personally?
It's that idea that our hearts can expand. Even when we feel like we're at our limit, there's still room to grow.
That's a powerful thought. It makes me think about all the times I've held back because I thought my heart couldn't handle it.
We've all been there, haven't we? But Christopher's story, it shows us that our hearts are stronger than we think, more resilient.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a question for you, our listener. If our hearts can really expand, what does that mean for you? How do you approach your emotions, your relationships? Think about it. We'll dive deeper into that and more in part 2 of our deep dive.
That's a really powerful question to ponder, It makes you question what you believe about your own heart. How much can it really take? Do we shy away from intense stuff, or do we lean in hoping it'll grow?
I think I've probably done my fair share of shying away. It's like we're taught that our emotions are limited, like a cup that can only hold so much.
It's a common idea, for sure. But what Christopher shows us is that maybe, just maybe, our hearts are more like, well, the universe, always expanding, changing, making space for more.
That's such a great analogy. It's not about keeping emotions bottled up, but letting them flow and change, become part of something bigger.
Exactly. And that connects to the eating emotions idea, right? It's not about ignoring or hiding those difficult feelings. It's about working with them, processing them, making them part of your experience.
Like saying, hey, fear, anger, sadness, I see you, I feel you, and I'm not going to run away.
Right. And when you're willing to do that, to engage, that's where the growth happens. Those tough emotions, they become fuel for change.
That's a big shift in how we usually think about things. What's really amazing is that Christopher could do this process, even in his relationship with his wife, which is like where emotions can get super intense, right?
Absolutely. Our closest relationships, they really test our emotional limits. And Christopher, he didn't just survive those intense moments, he thrived. That says a lot.
It shows how personal growth and healthy relationships go hand in hand.
Right. It's not about being some emotionally unbreakable person or being detached. It's about learning to deal with the whole spectrum of human experience, even the messy, vulnerable stuff that comes with being close to someone.
And what I find inspiring is that Christopher didn't just figure this out all on his own. He worked with a coach, got support, guidance.
So important. It shows us that asking for help when we're trying to grow is okay. Whether it's therapy, coaching, or just talking to friends and family, we don't have to do it alone.
It reminds me of that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that. It's about the power of community, of connection, helping each other grow.
And it reminds us that personal growth, it's not a finish line. It's a journey with ups and downs, easy parts and hard parts.
Exactly. And that's where the tools and practices Christopher developed, they become so important. They're like a guide, helping us navigate when things get tough.
Like a compass for exploring our inner world, right?
Exactly. And like any skill, the more we practice, the better we get at handling all those complex emotions.
So thinking about our listeners, what are some practical things they can take from Christopher's experience?
One big one is self-awareness. Christopher, he didn't just stumble onto this. He took time to understand what triggered him, his patterns, his core wound. That understanding, it was the base for everything else.
So for our listeners, maybe that means taking time for themselves, journaling when they feel overwhelmed, seeing what thoughts pop up, trying to figure out where those patterns come from.
Exactly. And another thing is being open to trying new things, experimenting. Christopher didn't stick to just one thing. He mixed stuff from different traditions, got creative.
So listeners could try different mindfulness things, visualization, mantras. It's about finding what clicks for you.
Right. And don't forget about getting support. Just like Christopher had his coach, maybe our listeners could benefit from a therapist, counselor, or mentor, someone to guide them.
It's about having people around you who support you doing this deep inner work.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about being perfect or never feeling anything, It's about learning to be kind to yourself, embracing your vulnerability, and trusting that you can grow.
That's beautifully said. And it brings us back to that question we asked at the end of part 1. If our hearts can really expand, how does that change how you approach your emotions and relationships? Have you had a chance to think about it? What have you discovered?
I'm so curious to hear what our listeners have to say, because at the end of the day, personal growth, it's something we do together. We learn from each other, inspire each other, and help each other along the way.
Well said. And with that, we'll continue exploring this question in the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back. So, as we've been talking about this eye of the needle stuff, I've been thinking it's not just about emotions, right? It seems like it could apply to, anything that feels tough, overwhelming. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. If you think about it as like expanding your capacity, it could be about, I don't know, anything, a creative block, fear of failing, even physical stuff.
That's what I was thinking, like those times you get stuck creatively. It's like your imagination hit a wall. Do you think Christopher's process could help with that?
Oh, totally. It's about acknowledging the block, facing that uncomfortable feeling, and then finding ways to move through it. Remember that contouring thing, tracing those internal shapes? Maybe you could use that to explore the block, like picture the limitations and try to hoop around them, like he does with that star.
That's a cool idea, like using visualization to see things differently, find a new way forward.
Exactly. And even the eating emotions thing, right? What if you don't resist the frustration, the fear? What if you eat those feelings, experience them fully, and see what happens next?
It's like using the blockage as fuel, right? Instead of letting it stop you, you turn it into something that pushes you forward.
Yeah. And that's where the magic is, turning those limitations into like chances to grow, to discover new things. It's about embracing the unknown, trusting that even when it's uncomfortable, something amazing can happen.
This is so powerful. Like, challenges aren't the enemy. They're how we evolve. And remember that Waking Lucid version. It said feeling overwhelmed is like a supernatural storage upgrade. It's like you're stretching, getting ready to level up.
I love that. It reminds us that we're not fixed, Our ability to grow, it changes, it evolves, just like the universe. And sometimes when you feel the most stretched, the most challenged, that's when you're about to break through.
It's like we're made to expand, to evolve, our hearts, our minds, everything. And the more we trust that, the better our lives become.
Totally. And the best part is you don't have to do it alone. Christopher's story shows us that. You can get support, guidance, inspiration from other people, a mentor, a group, even just sharing with someone you love.
That's so true. Connection is everything. And those connections, they give us strengths when things are tough.
For sure. And sometimes just hearing about someone else's journey, their ups and downs, can remind you that you're not alone.
This whole deep dive into the eye of the needle, it's been amazing, wouldn't you say? We've looked at personal stories, poetry, even a cosmic comedy, all to understand how to live more fully.
It really has. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to look at their challenges in a new way, with curiosity, with a sense of possibility, because every limitation, it's a chance to grow, to transform.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. What if we stopped seeing challenges as roadblocks and started seeing them as invitations? Invitations to become even more than we are now. What if, like Christopher discovered, we can grow more than we ever thought possible? Keep exploring, keep growing, and trust yourself. You have incredible potential.